Um, for those of you just joining, we're chatting about the Naval Air Station and Museum down in Pensacola, Florida, which is, I would say, a lesser known treasure in the U.S. I don't know that many people that have been to that museum. Up there with, I'd say, the World War II Museum in New Orleans. Have you been there? Where
Haven't
they
yet. It's on my list.
I think if I recall, I may be misspeaking. It's the factory they made the landing craft for D-Day in, and they made a new museum. It's like the best World War II museum I've ever been to.
Very
Um,
nice.
well, thank you all so much for making time tonight. And here, and before I get too ahead of myself, I'm gonna make Josie, Amber, Chrissy, I'll make y'all co-hosts if you don't mind helping me admit people as they filter in. But thank you all so much for making the time on what day of the week is it? Wednesday? On a Wednesday night to come out here and learn a little bit about what Jonathan has to offer. Jonathan Tennis has been a partner and close friend of the program for a couple of years now. And what I'll say about Jonathan, and I'm gonna drop his LinkedIn in the chat because I encourage you all to follow him. And what's great is usually Jonathan offers to personally connect with the folks that are in our program, but Jonathan takes, and sorry, John, to say this out loud in front of a bunch of people, but what I love about you is that you actually make the time to do these things out of your desire to help other folks, vets, and not just to help transition and get them a good job and live a good life and be able to upskill and do all that in this very convoluted world of networking and resumes and finding the right job. So for all of you tonight, Jonathan Tennis, this is not his first fireside chat. This one's a little bit more casual than previous ones where it was a little more structural. This is more of an AMA in a Reddit style where he'll share a little information, but really you can ask questions about his transition from the Army as an officer, also his work at Microsoft and his work with nonprofit groups in general. So Jonathan currently works as a project manager for Microsoft, been a friend of the program for a while. And was worked in the Army as an officer. And I always say intel because I'm kind of briefing it, but information management officer. So Jonathan, thank you so much for making time to come out here tonight to share a little bit with our students. And really the floor is yours, sir. And again, for those that don't know me, Steve Olson, one of the program managers, and this is my cat Tesla. Here working part-time on a Wednesday evening. I work full-time as a system administrator for UNC Charlotte and help to work here with the CWCT program. So I'm also happy to connect with folks. I don't have nearly the knowledge or connections or networking advice that Jonathan has, but if you want to be a system admin, at least I can talk to you about that. Jonathan, thank you again for being here. Floor is yours, sir.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah. And apologies for the confusion. So I was an intelligence analyst, but when I was transitioning out, like a lot of the work that I did was information management. And actually I was on the enlisted side. But my job titles that I held when I was in were information management officer, maintenance officer, safety officer. I've had a lot of interesting roles. I love the Army. Best decision my 19-year-old brain ever made. But my transition story is one that caused me to feel about the community the way that I do. Survived it. That's fantastic. But then the then 25-year-old version of me was getting out of the Army as a staff sergeant with no undergraduate education completed. And basically the Army was like, hey, here's your DD 214, which is great. Everybody wants that, right? Showing honorable discharge. Here's a resume template. Best of luck out there. And, I understand that TAP has improved a lot over the years. I've been out of uniform for 20 years. I like to joke with folks who know about height weight standards in the military. I say 20 years and 20 pounds ago. But I mean, I'm grateful that I kept that close to my fighting weight, but it's been a long time. TAP has improved a lot. A lot of programs out there like Honor Heroes, American Corporate Partners, Veterati, Vets Industry, all sorts of things but we're still missing people. And what my work and what I attempt to do when working with people online is closing those gaps. We have too many people that fall through the gaps, and we have a community that as a result of that, we have the statistics that we all know too much about. We lose people. They go down in a mental health spiral. They've lost their tribe. They've lost their people, and then bad things happen. And what what I'm hoping to do as a result of this is say, hey, look, it can be rough, but I know this is being recorded, but y'all have done hard things. Y'all have done hard. I often say, y'all have done hard shit, and it's hard. Transition is hard, but I think that understanding that from that perspective and recognizing that you've done those things, and you can come out on the other side. There's so many statistics, there's so many reports that are written about how veterans are better hires in the sense of give them anything in the world and they'll figure it out. They're resilient. And whether you serve 5 years or 25 years, whether you washed out in basic training because of medical injury, doesn't matter. Service is service as far as I'm concerned. And having served, getting that community here on the civilian side is really huge. So like I said, 20 years ago, transitioned out, spent a lot of time doing DoD consulting. Managed to get a call from Microsoft a few years ago. They said, hey, would you like to do customer success? I said, well, tell me more about it. They told me more. It's something I've been doing for about 15 years already, in terms of the roles, where I was sitting side by side with a customer, making sure that their programs and their projects were getting handled in a timely, on budget manner. And so I thought, yeah, this would be great. I currently support a DoD customer. I support the Marine Corps and the Navy. Love the work that I do. I'm in Pensacola right now, traveling to support one of my customers. Be flying back home to DC, which is where I live now. Former Tampanian, relocated to DC in the midst of COVID. Some people like to laugh and they're like, "We must have had COVID, and that's what caused you to leave Florida." And I said, "I just want to see what DC was like." So with that, I'll turn it over to y'all. This is meant to be your time, and certainly, happy to answer any questions you have regarding DoD consulting. I worked for General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, a small called EKS, which most people have never heard of. I've done lots of different projects, been deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, Iraq as a soldier, Iraq and Afghanistan as a civilian. With that, I'll turn it over to y'all. Anybody, I did get pinged from some friends who are like, hey, I saw you're going to be online. And I think lastly, before I mute myself, I want to thank Steve Olson and company for having these. It takes all of us who are here. And so the one thing I'll ask everybody when you get transition, when you get to that next spot, do please remember that there are people. You don't have to dedicate your whole life to it. You don't have to spend 18 hours a day doing it as a way of saying thanks. But in general, just giving an opportunity to give back to that community. Remember that just because you got aboard, just because you got to the top of the mountain, turn around because there are people who are right behind you who need that help. The estimates are 120 to 200,000 service members transition every single year. That's incredible when you think about the numbers, and still too many of them fall through the gaps. We'll probably never get that number to zero, but we can, I think, do more. And expecting this to be a sort of service provided solution, I think is just not going to happen. Service is great at creating soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, guardians, but it's not in their job to return us to civilian world. It's their job to make us into those service members. And so no matter how much they improve it, there's still going to be missing pieces. And when we know those missing pieces and can help each other. So with that, time is yours.
My only thing I'll add, and thanks, Jonathan. This is not for everyone here. This is not one of our normal large events. Unmute, ask the questions, use this time. This is your time. So, and if you don't want to, send me a chat and I'll ask. If you want to,
I'll shoot the first question out if you guys don't mind. If you guys can hear me on my mic.
Yeah, Martin, thank you.
Awesome, yeah, absolutely. Hey, Jonathan, and like to both you, really, and like pretty much everyone who's volunteering their time to just provide this information to individuals transitioning now. And again, I just got out within the past 8 months, and I did a lot of the right things, like the Skill Bridge program, getting I got out on a Friday, started working on a Monday. And even with doing those right things, the level of unpreparedness and that blanket of security comes off really fast. So genuinely do appreciate you guys taking the time, just being very transparent and open with us. And kind of leading into that, my question for Jonathan, being that you do have a lot of this background in tech and IT, and specifically for this program, I did the Skill Bridge program, which leveraged a lot of, I would say soft skills to get me in a position in a company. I work with Verizon. great company. They've been nothing but amazing, very helpful with this transition with mine. All my team members have been more than helpful to kind of get me up to speed. I'm coming from a supply chain background, so very different industries in terms of vernacular knowledge, and then also just getting out of the Marine Corps and going to the corporate world, being very the culture is totally different. So I guess my ask for you is, I like decided to sign up for this program specifically to help me kind of get up to speed with some of my peers with the role that I'm in. And just so kind of help give a little bit more breadth to my question, my specific role is a product manager over at Verizon. And again, no experience, in the tech communications field. Again, I was very fortunate enough to use a skill bridge program, which is an amazing program and got me into this position. But I want to make sure, when it comes to using my time and energy and, like you said, I don't want to pursue programs if they're not going to specifically benefit me in like the role and kind of my goals moving forward. So I guess I'll leave that right there. I know that was kind of a lot to digest at first, and I'll just kind of leave that.
So, I mean, to start with, Verizon's got an amazing veteran network. You talked about the security blanket of the military being removed. Yeah, it happens fast. You take off that uniform. And I mean, I do a lot of calls via Veterati, American Corporate Partners, calls like this. And, I talk to people openly, honestly about it, 20, 25 years, taking that uniform off. Most people who have spent that time, if you think about it, 18 or 22, so 18 if you enlist, 22 if you're coming out of college and commissioning, spending the next 20 years in uniform, spending your entire adult life, essentially, in this one place doing this one thing, and obviously not in one place because here, there, and everywhere. But having that tribe is hugely key. There's like a handful of books. I'm an avid reader. I co-host a number of book clubs. There's a number of books I recommend to folks, and one that is almost every conversation I have with a person is Tribe. It's a book by Sebastian Junger. If you've seen the documentaries Restrepo, he spent some time in the Korengal Valley, which is a really nasty place in Afghanistan, hanging out with some troops. He's a journalist, written a book called War, also amazing book. But Tribe specifically talks to that exact thing, and that is that we are tribal people. We're not meant to have 50,000 friends on Facebook or 30,000 connections on LinkedIn, so we just can't keep up with them. You really have a core group of people that are your tribe. And so when you leave the service, there's that loss of tribe, that loss of community. It's out here. You just have to find it. We just wear different clothes. But one of the things that helped me a lot is getting involved with the employee resource groups at whatever company you happen to be at. Also veteran service organizations. And I have some that I prefer and some that I enjoy. I'm just going to name them all, and there's not a ranked preference. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see the ones that I'm more active in. Those are the ones that I invest my time where I find it most beneficial. So Mission Continues, Team Rubicon, Wear Blue Run to Remember, Travis Manion Foundation, organizations like that give you an opportunity to get back to the community. A lot of them have a lot of vets in it, which is nice because, if you're sitting down, we're good about doing things like moving piles of rocks, and people say, hey, move this. Like I did an event with Team Rubicon the other day, where we're feeding people who are food insecure. The Northern Virginia area, for as wealthy as it is, one of the wealthiest places in this country, food insecurity is off the charts. It's ridiculous. Some of the statistics I've seen say something like 30% of the households in the region are food insecure. And there are a lot of people who live in the region. So we did food layout. We're bagging these bags, creating these rows of bags. So set up these rows, put all the items in. We had squads of people calling out, moving the piles from place to place as we were getting ready to hand them all out. But it was I don't remember what the percentage of folks who were veterans there, but it just felt so good to be like, all right, here we go. Like when we created a fireman brigade where we were handing the packages off to each other as we were getting them out the door and getting them in the hands of people who need them. When you have an event like that where you get together, and it had nothing to do with me working as a program manager, it had nothing to do with who I work for, had to do with just service community. it's something to remember because, you know, service continues, and our motto at Microsoft for our employee resource group is we still serve. And I really like it because it reminds people that service doesn't have to stop just because you're not in uniform. You know, I think that's kind of in general what I felt like I heard from what you're asking. I don't remember if there was a specific ask near the end. There was a lot that you covered in terms of where you're at, in terms of kind of where you've landed. Product management is a fascinating realm because there's so many different places where people say, I mean, even at Microsoft, we have product managers, and you talk to two different product managers, and it's different how they product manage. So one of the things that's really confusing in the civilian world I wanted to touch on, and that is the titles. So project managers, program managers, product managers, ops managers, you know, account managers, like what does it all mean? It's gonna mean different things. So I ask those questions to those folks is one of the things. But yeah, Martin, if you don't mind coming back off mute, did I hit on kind of generally some of the themes of what you
No,
wanted to say?
absolutely. I definitely appreciate the recommendations, and then also kind of highlighting the ERGs with some of these companies. I would say my question was more tailored, and I apologize if I may have led you astray. Was specifically the CWCT program, like somebody in a role with a, you know, within like the tech community or the communications industry, like Verizon, so like you said with Microsoft. Do you see these certifications providing, I guess, dividends to kind of get me up to speed with, I guess you get some of my peers? Because again, I understand these are the fundamentals of getting introduced, you know, to kind of that realm. Um, so I guess the specific correlation of the role and the program, I want to make sure that, you know, this is something that, hey, like full transparency, like maybe you should go a different route or maybe not, is kind of like the bottom line.
Okay. Yeah, no, appreciate you getting me back on track. Um, One of the things I do in any session I do is it's about marketability. I have a lot of things that I say, and if you get on any of the calls I co-host, I do a mentorship live call on Fridays, every Friday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, and I do a biweekly Sunday call 11 a.m. And the whole goal in that is anybody who's open to work, anybody who has questions about roles, interview process, resume tips, LinkedIn profile optimization, whatever. When it comes to marketability, anything that you can do, and I'll use myself as an example. I failed out of college. That's how I ended up in the Army. It was great. College was a little bit too exciting for me, just a little bit too much freedom. And 19, I got a letter from the University of Georgia that said, "Thank you very much. We appreciate you paying your tuition for the last year. You are no longer welcome here, academically speaking." You know, joined the Army. And ever since then, it's been making myself more marketable. It is solely, you know, what can you do to make yourself more marketable? So I got out of the Army and was like, okay, I don't have a degree. I didn't have any degrees. So I went back to school, got a bunch of credits, ended up having a meeting with one of my professors near the end. And they're like, you know, you're like 3 credits shy of another degree. And I was like, cool, right, whatever. I had 0 degrees. Now I'm going to have 2. So double majored as an undergrad. You know, making me more marketable? Absolutely. I have a degree. It's in American Studies and Information Management. Never used it ever in my life, but it was fun to get. My graduate degrees are in cybersecurity and poetry. Again, I'm waiting for that job rec to be posted at some point in time that's looking for a dude or dudette who's got graduate degrees in cybersecurity and poetry, because I'm like, yes, there's got to be like only 5 of us in the world, probably, you know, but at least it makes me, you know, I'm competitive, right? And so one of the things that anything that you do, no, there is something and this is definitely something I would caution folks about. There are folks who are like, I'm going to get every cert out there, right? You open up the big book of certs, right? And they go and get them all. Well, they don't have any experience in this, you know, and you know, they're cert heavy. And so there's kind of like, it's almost like, I wasn't a scout and, you know, but it's almost like they're collecting them like badges, right? You know, and it's not that. What you do want to focus on is focusing on those that are going to make you more marketable. So anything you can do to improve yourself, your chances, getting from the big pile into the little pile is everything you need to do. That's a combination of marketability when it comes to certificates. It's a combination of networking. And really at this point, it's a combination of making sure that, you know, when you apply for a role, you know, having those referrals, when you want to know about the role, you know, reach out to the company. You know, I have probably 100 customer success account managers in my network. That's not a humble brag or a vanity metric. That like, it's the point of that is if we're connected and that's the area you want to work in, reach out to them and say, hey, I spoke with Jonathan. He was on a call recently, blah, blah, blah. I do a lot of this stuff. So people are used to like being like, what is Jonathan doing in his spare time? Like, don't you worry about it. It's how do you, PMP, it's great. I don't have a PMP. Just never took it. It's great because there are a lot of roles that require it, because it's gold standard project management. But it doesn't mean you can't be a project manager without it. I know that you mentioned product management. They're closely enough aligned. CISSP, I have a degree in cybersecurity. I don't have a CISSP. Could I pass it? I don't know. I've never tested. It's something that's on my list. It's like sort of like I have a bucket list of certs of things that I'm not super cert heavy. I'm super education heavy just because I kept going back to school. I had GI Bill remaining. So I was just like, why not? Why not go back to school? But I do see a lot of people saying, get a PMP, it'll solve all their problems in the world. I've never had a PMP, but I know people who do have PMPs and they still have problems. So I would say that the cautionary tale I would say is walk a fine line. Consider what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. So if you're trying to get a cert and you see that as a way to get you to your desired end state, it's worthwhile. But if you're just out there collecting certs just because like Thanos and the Infinity Stones, you're not gonna there's not going to be a point where you just collect that last one and it's going to be like, plus it doesn't end well for Thanos, if you remember. So plot spoiler for those who haven't seen the movie. But yeah, so it's one of those things that collect the certs that are applicable to you, focus on those. If you just like doing certs and you're really good at them, great. I know people who still list the MCSE, Microsoft Certified Software Engineer, on there, and that's been gone for a minute now. But it's really focused on the things. When I do talk with folks about what certs to focus on, I typically say, or what kind of technical specialties, I typically suggest anything that's cloud related. And that's not specifically to Microsoft. Everything that's cloud related. So Amazon's got a cloud, amazing cloud. Google's got a cloud, amazing cloud. Microsoft's got one too. So those three folks are really kind of knowing and being able to talk intelligently about those clouds. Anything that's AI related, AI is here to stay. AI is the future. If you haven't played with ChatGPT, please do. If you haven't played with generative image creators like Design, please do. Amazing stuff. But those are the things I would suggest. If you're in security, like in cyber, CISSP is going to open doors. But there might be other things, steps between there. So CISSP shouldn't be the only thing. And that's really one of those things. Talk to those folks who work in cyber, in those roles. I don't work in a cyber role. I happen to, Steve and I got connected and he's like, hey, I'm doing this thing. I was like, that's cool. I'd love to come on, be able to give back to the community. But I'm definitely I wouldn't put myself off as a cyber expert. I'm somebody who knows a lot about the market because I've been in it a lot. Somebody who's done a ton of resume reviews, done a lot of interviews on both sides of the table. But yeah, I would say this is an answer I'll probably say a lot in this call, but it depends. It depends on what you're looking for. If you want to come off mute and, since you were the one who broke the ice, and ask, specifically what you're looking at doing, and whether or not that cert would pertain, or if you want to message me, I'm happy to take a look and maybe see if I can connect you with somebody who's more knowledgeable if I can answer the question.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I don't want to make it too quick because I want to give time for everyone else. But essentially, I was a supply chain manager in the Marine Corps, got with product management over Verizon, wanted to kind of pursue my own personal education, kind of bring me up speed to like my peers that have like 10, 12 years experience in the role. So I said, what, I'm going to do this program, this year from, January to, January. And then the idea is to get my master's in business analytics, come January 2025, using the GI Bill, and kind of pursue kind of that route where, I'm mixing it a little bit with, higher education with some certifications, but really it's not to kind of do the Boy Scout badge on my chest. It's really just like personal knowledge, because I know I learn really well in a classroom setting. So it's more of like leveraging, something that I know is a weakness. I wish I could just, pull up on my computer, look up. Now, a lot of people can do that, that self-educating piece where they can just learn sitting in front of a screen on their own. I can't. So this is one of the things I'm trying to leverage to kind of just get my foot more and more in the door as I progress with the company.
Yeah. So, I mean, and even if you did want to collect that, that's fine. What I always caution and what I tell folks is the concern I have is you see a lot of people who give advice and say, hey, collect these 5 certs and then you'll never be unemployed or you'll never not be laid off. And I don't like advice like that because I know people with PMPs and CISSPs and PhDs that are employed. I was laid off. When was I laid off? I was laid off about 10 years ago. So at the time, I only had 1 master's degree. So I had a master's degree in cybersecurity, still laid off. None of this is, and that's just the reality of where we're going, in terms of tech. I just read a stat right before I got on this call. 300,000 people over the last few years have been laid off from tech companies. I didn't have a chance to verify it, so I apologize for throwing out a figure that I haven't had a chance to look into myself. But it seems about right when you think about all the layoffs, the rounds of layoffs that have gone around all the tech world. So it's really about constantly improving yourself, and that's just a growth mindset in general. Like just because I have finished formal education for the time being, and I'm taking a little bit of a break, doesn't mean there aren't things that I'm trying to do to educate myself. With exploring other areas. So I think there's always value in education. I think there's always values in plussing up and completing things. Even if you never use it in your day-to-day work. I mean, like I said, graduate degree in poetry. I don't write a lot of poetry for Microsoft, but it's kind of neat. It's a great talking point, something fun. I do write a lot at work. I do edit a lot. And so just the line editing alone, just my ability to look at a document and be like, hey, I'll give you an example. I was doing a resume review for somebody. The words disparate and desperate, very close. They're both actual words. So spell check doesn't recognize them. And so I'm reading through this person's and I was like, I think that you meant to say disparate there rather than desperate. And they did, in fact. And so it was a typo and, I was able to see it. Alignment, I'm able to see a lot of alignments, 2 different fonts. And those are little like nitpicky things that people are like, oh, that's not a big deal. But it's something that it may be the thing that, because it doesn't bother me and it wouldn't change my opinion of the candidate. But I'm not the one who's sitting there doing the recruiting. I'm not the one who's moving that person from that big pile and little pile. And somebody out there will be like, this person doesn't know the difference between disparate and desperate. I'm gonna throw them out of the pile. And it sucks. It sucks that that's the reality. But yeah, I think that all the times I've been educated, all the times the things I've learned in life, I've never regretted it, and it's been good. But do so with the realization that there are no guarantees. If you ever want to take a look and have me take a closer look at some of the things you're looking at and considering, happy to look at the plan that you have and put it in motion. Amber, I see you've got your hand up.
Yay! Hey, Jonathan. Yeah. So I got some DM questions that people are asking me. So I'm going to kind of summarize it a little bit.
Sure.
So we have a number of participants who aren't military. Some of them are law enforcement. Some of them are spouses. Some of them are just passionate about cybersecurity. What would be your top 5, 6 suggestions for getting employed at Microsoft in some type of IT cyber position? What would your top 5 tips be?
Top 5 tips. Okay, so let's go with networking. If you've never done a filtered search on LinkedIn, pop onto LinkedIn. If it's a company, I'll use Microsoft. There are lots of companies out there that do cyber work. So let's specifically, because Amber asked, at Microsoft, click on Microsoft, click on people. And when you go to those steps, you'll then see all the people that are on LinkedIn that list Microsoft as their employer. From there, you can then click under title or job, name. If I can go live, I can actually do this. Is that something that's allowed, Steve?
Yeah, of course. Let me give you the.
Ooh, I get control.
Yeah, I'll just make you the host of the whole thing. There you go.
You regret that.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Likely not with you.
Regrets. Okay. So I'm going to go once I get to be able to, and I apologize. I really don't do this intentionally. I can never find, we don't use this platform at the office. So I can never find how to share things. And so I'm like, where's the button? I just feel
No,
like
that's how I am with Microsoft Teams. I'm embarrassed to be an IT manager because I don't know how to work Teams.
we get there, right? We get there.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, cool. So if we go, people are messaging me. Oh, go away. We'll talk later. Okay, so if you go up here to the search bar and you type in Microsoft, and you get to see, here we go. Okay, so view the page. Once you go into following, you go into jobs, you go into people. So you do people. I'll go back and verify my email later. That's it expires every 6 months or so. Anyway, there's 225,000 people who are on LinkedIn who associate themselves, where they live, where they studied. If you tab over, you can see what they do. Okay, so we really don't want to mess around with any of that. We just want to simply go, okay, how many of those have cyber in their title? Okay, let's just see. It's going to be a lot. Okay, yeah, that's about right. Okay, so now we want to narrow it down because, I want to focus on an area in which I live. Somebody throw out a geographic region, please.
Let's do
Texas.
Chicagoland.
Chicago. Okay, Chicago. Here we go. Chicago, Illinois, or greater Chicago area. Now, here's the thing. I know this much about Chicago, but I know that a lot of people live in the burbs. So let's go greater Chicago. When you're doing a major metropolitan area, do as broad a circle as you possibly can. So that way you're not missing somebody who because there are people who will identify as Dallas-Fort Worth is probably a great example. Dallas is here, Fort Worth's here. There are people who specifically are like, no, I live in Dallas. I don't live in Fort Worth. So I just do, metropolitan area as much as possible. So that way I don't miss anybody. So greater Chicago area, cyber, Microsoft. These are what we filtered with so far. We're down to 60. That's really a pretty easy list. You can manage a list like that. Then it goes into where they've studied, which is fantastic. Maybe you went to one of those schools, okay? But what you can do there is go through there and go, okay, hey, Beth, again, your search may vary, in terms of who's up here first. What I often do is I'll right click on these and open them in new tabs. So that way I can just open them all up. And then if you can see it from my screen, I do like tabs. And then I go into those tabs, which I can't because I can't seem to get this thing to go away. Anyway, so I'll just click on one, right? So I'm going to click on Beth. So I live in Chicago. Let's just believe I do. I want to work in cyber at Microsoft. Beth does all those things. She's a global cybersecurity specialist. She's a CISSP. Cool, awesome, working at Microsoft. She doesn't show where she went to school up top. That's an edit thing that you can change. And I highly recommend you do that. If you go to your personal profiles after I'm done with the demo, there's a little pencil icon over here. Click it and then scroll through, and you have to actually choose to list your education. Highly encourage you to do that because there are people like me who scroll through LinkedIn and you're like, I want to find all the people that went to Eckerd College, Norwich University, or the University of Tampa. Those are the 3 places I went to school successfully. And I want to connect with people because I want to build my network with those different alums. So we don't know where she went to school, doesn't matter, but I want to connect with Beth. I'm going to send Beth a note, and I'm just going to be simple. We're going to, see we both went to blah, 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 whatever school is, or see you work in cyber at MSFT, would love to connect and learn more as I am interested in this path. Okay. Wanted to do that live because I wanted to show you how easy it is. You do not need to write an entire, dissertation war piece about who you are. That you'll get to that part. You'll get an opportunity to tell people who you are when you get the connection. We don't know how often Beth is online, and I'm only using Beth because Beth is the example. So I clicked out of that because I'm not going to send Beth a note. I might connect with her later. Who knows? We've got a lot of mutual connections. Dennis Guzzi is a guy who works in security who I know I have a connection with through Travis Manion Foundation. So as she started before I did. She's got 14 years experience as a technical consultant. Here's her activity. Okay. She commented on a post 4 days ago, commented on a post 5 months ago. That's not bad. It shows she's present and active. There are people who have LinkedIn and they're like, I have to have LinkedIn because if I work in 2024, you have to have LinkedIn. But you can go through here and see what type of activity somebody has. So if you connect with somebody and the last time they were online was when they commented on a post 5 years ago, there's a good chance that they're not going to accept your request because they're not going to be all that active. They're not going to be on LinkedIn. So you want to look to see somebody's activity level just to kind of gauge. Here's the thing, send 100 of these requests out in a week. You may get 50 back. You may get 20 back. You may get 10 back. But one of the things I tell people all the time, and it's scary because the military, especially law enforcement as well, teaches you don't do anything on social media, don't post anything on social media, don't expose yourself on social media because China and Russia are threats. China and Russia are threats. But it's likely that you're not going to get phished. I mean, you have a greater chance or likelihood of a Nigerian prince trying to steal money from you, with that, than you would like somebody actually like a real CI threat. One of the things that do when coaching is saying, get used to like reaching out to people you don't know. Because I didn't know any of you, well, most of you, I knew Steve, but I didn't know most of you before this call. And yet now we're all on our network and we all know each other. So get used to that. If they accept your request and they say, hey, I don't have time. If they accept your request and you're like, hey, I do have time, set up some time, spend some time with them. Maybe don't send out 100 requests the first week you do it. Send out 10, see who responds, and then schedule follow-up time. Everybody in this world is worth a cup of coffee, in my opinion. So 20 minutes with someone, thank them for their time, learn a little bit about, you're planting seeds out there in the world. You're creating an army of followers and fans. And so that way Beth is 6 months down the road going to be thinking, like, man, I need somebody to work in the cyber role. I need entry level, which we don't have time for me to get on my soapbox about entry level cyber positions. But when that happens, then maybe Beth reaches out and like, hey, Microsoft just opened a position, or y'all are connected, and Beth posts, because I often share roles. Like there was an opening recently for my team, and I shared it on my LinkedIn feed and said, hey, here's a great team, great effort. And I do that when I see other teams that do post. We are starting to open up some positions. So, that's sort of the whole kind of filtering with LinkedIn. Use LinkedIn to your advantage, filter, use the tools, see who I'm connected with. And unfortunately, there's no way to show this without actually showing the number of connections I have. It's not about connections. It really isn't, because the only power and the value that my network poses to me and is what my connections, what my network can do for y'all. The point of bringing somebody into your network is saying, hey, maybe Christian is somebody who you need to be, connected with. That's fantastic. Making those connections. That's the whole thing I want to do with LinkedIn. So I oftentimes will say, hey, take a look at my network, see if there is somebody in my network that is in one of those roles, in one of those companies, product managers, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, whatever it is. And that, I think, is a good, helpful way to kind of take a look at that. I'm going to stop sharing now. Did that get after what you were looking for, Amber?
So networking, are there any other tips that you would recommend?
Yeah, Jonathan, you promised 6, I think.
Yeah, if there's
that was
5,
one.
I said
I'm just
5,
kidding.
but you
I'm
can do
kidding.
6. We're aiming high. We're aiming high.
No, I'm kidding. No, that was really helpful for networking, Jonathan. I think that is actually really a lesser known thing about LinkedIn and using that feature, because I think sometimes it's just like searching for the name of the company in the search bar and then just sending someone a chat. So I think that's super helpful, because kind of navigating the nuance of LinkedIn. It sounds so silly, right? But like LinkedIn can help you get a good job. I meet so many people, and like if they actually listen to these things and they actually use it, they get a 6-figure job doing what they actually wanted to do. That's pretty cool. So
yeah, it's hard to break into cybers, and I'll just quickly jump on the box and I'll jump off. I can't tell you the number of entry level positions I see for cyber that require 3 to 5 years experience, and I'm like, I want to yell at the HR people. I'm like, I don't think you know what entry level means, and so like, it's not for everybody to go into the military, and that shouldn't be a requirement, but we have a huge deficit, which programs like CWCT are trying to fill in sort of cyber talent. And it's a national security risk that we place, because we do have active threat. And Microsoft's dealing with that right now with a nation state, and we keep referring to it as nation state. It's like one specific nation state that keeps attacking us, and we can't discuss what their success or not success has been, but it's out there. The threat is real. We need people who are willing to do this, who want to do this. But yeah, it's one of those things that I think that leveraging LinkedIn and realizing what a powerful tool it is. There are people who are like, I don't refer people. I don't use LinkedIn. I'm not on LinkedIn. People ask me all the time. They're like, man, you seem like you're on LinkedIn a lot. Yeah, it seems like that. And that's another cool, fun thing about LinkedIn. Just quickly, you can program all of your posts you can schedule posts, and I do most of what I would call content creation on the weekend. And then I generate it to post it during the week. So it looks like I'm online, but at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm answering emails. I'm not posting things on social media. I'll go back throughout the day in breaks between, because we do get breaks around here. And I'll go and like comment or like, or, share something else. But that way, like it shows like you've got a presence. And the things that I post about are things that I care about: mentorship, volunteerism, giving back to my community, talk about just veterans helping veterans, stuff like this. These are things like I'll probably, anybody who wants to come on camera at the end, love to grab a screen grab, post and highlight that there are programs out here like this that are doing good work, and then advocate that anybody in my network connect with people who are looking to, get cyber mentoring, because it's that back and forth. It's educating people. I was on a Veterati call last night, and I rattled off like 5 things. Veterati, not Veterati, excuse me, Vets to Industry, AmeriCorps Partners, 4Block, Canderful. I forget what the 5th one was. They hadn't heard of any of them. And that's the thing. It's these great programs exist out there to help people transition, to help people in these situations. I do love that CWCT takes that core group and that core community that I care so much about, the veteran, military spouse, and transitioning service members, expands it to law enforcement, and kind of is serving to help kind of get people onto that path. But yeah, who else has got questions?
And before I do any more questions, I've got one for you. It's about time we did a group picture on a Zoom call. I love those. I know when I worked with 4Block, you just mentioned them. They're big on that. And I was like, I don't know about that, but like when you're in person, it's fine. And then on Zoom, it's like, oh gosh, I'm at home.
Blurry background. Nobody,
yeah.
no one really cares what's back there anyway. It's like, I mean, we saw Tesla, Tesla can jump in there,
Yeah, Tesla and Fiero, and then Pontiac runs around too. So one of my questions was from one of our participants, and Amber, I know you had like a multifaceted question. We can get back to the 5 points because I do like that. I know a lot of people in this call want to work at Microsoft, but I had one specific about looking for advice or resources on finding job opportunities abroad, specifically the UK or Japan. Any advice for that question? I've never heard that question before, so I have no answer. So, Jonathan, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't either. There are 2 places I've never really wanted to work. And I think it's just get connected with people who are in those markets. Do you want to work? I mean, I guess the question would be, you want to work as an expat, like work for an American company while living in one of those places because you just particularly like those areas, or because it could be one of the scary statistics about mil spouses is they're the most educated group in America and the most underemployed, in the sense of when you look at the positions that they're able to get a lot of times. So remote work is helping fix some of those issues, but yeah, I think it's really connect with folks who work in those areas, connect with folks who have followed that path. So finding folks who work in those regions, for companies that you want to work for, and then connecting with them. I just don't have I'm not very educated at that, so I wouldn't really be able to answer much. So I did drop to Steve the mentorship live and the Sunday job search discussions. And once we connect, you'll see that it's something I post about weekly, just because it's a great opportunity to connect with folks. Trying to look at the chat, see if there's anything else in there that got covered.
I don't see anything right now, but I think we can go back to if anyone wants to come off mute, if that's okay with you, Jonathan, and see if there's any other questions. We've got about 13 minutes. I'm happy to stay as long. I don't want to keep you, Jonathan, but about 12 minutes left. So, I mean, if you have a question, please ask. Come off mute. Ask Jonathan. You've got the time now.
Yeah. Terry put in some notes about USA jobs and clearance jobs being good resources. Yeah. Thumbs up. I'll give you a thumbs up too. I'm 100% with you. Yeah. And those are, look for some of those places. And it depends. If you're not cleared, then clearance jobs isn't necessarily the greatest resource. But USA jobs, we've got facilities, we've got US government employees all over the world. overseas jobs. Look, see, you got some people who dropped into a good nugget there. Ibrahim, you got
Hello.
hey.
Hi, my name is Abraham. Sorry for stepping in a little late. So, my question is, if you had to pick 3 certs or 4 certs, I don't know if you answered this, including Microsoft, what would you pick for someone in cyber and someone in information technology as a whole?
Yeah, so we touched on a little bit. I would say just quickly, anything that's cloud related for any of the companies that offer cloud solutions, and anything that's AI related is going to help you. Cyber specifically, CISSP is the gold standard as far as I know, but I don't have one. I do have a cyber degree, but I did that more than anything because I come from the intelligence background. I was a signals intelligence analyst, and cyber really came from that community. And I just thought it would be fun to learn about a different type of threat, and one that doesn't keep me up at night, but it is definitely a pretty significant threat in terms of, I mean, the war in Ukraine was launched with cyber and psychological operations as the the first rounds of that battle, and we're going to see that in modern conflict. We're going to see cyber attacks and psychological operations, information operations being used in ways that we didn't previously. We're still going to have conventional war, but that's something. CISSP is one. I would say reach out to those people who work in cyber, who say, hey, what's the thing that got you the job? But yeah, so I would say that those are the things that I would answer with. Hopefully that helped.
Yes, and I actually have my background in Signal 2, Fort Garden, Georgia. So you probably were there. I was there in '97.
So I was a signals intelligence analyst. So
Okay.
I wasn't signal. I was a SIGINT nerd.
Oh, SIGINT, I know SIGINT. So
Yeah.
I worked with SIGINT too on Fort Bragg for a while.
Yeah.
I try to get the CISSP. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. CSSP is great. And I mean, I saw Steve shaking his head. It's something that one of the things, I don't know if you were on when I was doing a demo, but reaching out to folks who work in cyber and getting those folks to help mentor. I've got a lot of experience in the job market just because I've had to, as a consultant, I had to look for a lot of jobs over the years. Worked some big companies, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin. I currently work for Microsoft. But that's, everything is temporary. And, I tell people all the time, they ask, well, what would you do if you got laid off? I'm like, take a little time for myself and then figure it out from there. But I do realize from having watched many of my friends get laid off over the last year and a half, the job market is, you got to remain competitive. You got to continue to always be prepared. I do come from Florida, and somebody I know wrote a really great article about looking at layoff preparedness in the similar way that people look at hurricane preparedness. Be prepared, have your resume updated, keep your network fresh, be prepared to do interviews, be ready to look. But there's nothing that can stop it from happening. It's a part of the world we live in today.
Thank you.
For sure. Francisco.
How's it going, sir? Similar to Martin, recently got out about 6 months ago. I was in SATCOM 25 series. I've been going down the path of getting into more formal education. I did the UNC at Charlotte cyber boot camp training. I'm also doing the CWCT course now to get some certifications, just things to help stand out on my resume and everything like that. But I keep feeling like I'm falling short or somewhere in the middle of the stack. And the next big thing I'm working on is gaining experience in cybersecurity, even though I haven't had the actual work experience, but with home projects, basically. But is there anything else that you might recommend to help get more noticed? I just keep feeling like I'm falling short in places, even though I'm working on in all those areas, but just looking for something else.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate the vulnerability. Yeah. So it's not that you're falling short. It really isn't. I know that the goal when you apply for a job is to get that job. But do realize and recognize the competition, you know, for jobs around here. The job on my team that was opened up, I think my boss told me that in a week he had to cap it at 1,000 apps, because he wasn't going to be able to go through that. You know, and that's the thing. We're really at a point where it's just the capacity of an individual. You know, it's like people love to make ATS the boogeyman, the applicant tracking system, but it's not. The reality is that every job that's out there, just about, you know, that's worth having, that people are wanting to apply to, you know, is probably, you know, 1,000 applicants. You can't compete. Nobody can. I couldn't. You know, I'm proud of my education and my experience. I can't compete against 1,000 people. Just impossible. But if you reduce that number down, you know, so this is where I coach big pile to little pile. But that requires having somebody on the inside. That requires somebody, you know, being able to, because that's really what it is. Your competitive advantage is, that's where networking becomes the key, is getting somebody who can reach into that pile and pull that person out, and then you actually stand a fighting chance. Or you just get lucky. You know, military, we say it all the time, I'd rather be lucky than good. I've gotten lucky a lot in life. I ended up getting cold called about the job I have right now. People are like, and I've only applied to Microsoft once. I actually applied to a competitor. I'd applied to a competitor probably 150. No, I actually counted it up the other day. It was like 220 times I had applied to another person. We don't talk about that person, but I'd applied to their company 220, 250 times. It doesn't matter. Like, I'd never gotten an offer, got cold called, or Microsoft recruiter was like, hey, do you want to do this job? I'm like, that sounds cool. Still had to interview, you know, still had to, you know, be competitive in that process. But I got very lucky. And so I'd say that's where networking is key, making sure that you develop that. If you want to work in cyber, you want to work at Microsoft, you know, feel free to poach my connections, feel free to go through and look. Doesn't even have to be my connections. You know, I definitely wouldn't sit here on a call and market my connections as the end all be all. I just happen to have a lot of people who are connected with me at Microsoft because I work at Microsoft. That could change tomorrow. And that's something that always be prepared for. I was recently sharing with a very dear friend of mine that I was like, oh man, you know, another round of layoffs happened. You know, it was an internal conversation. Hadn't realized that round had gotten them. And so we sat there and we spent some time. And it was just like, it was hard. It was hard to like hear that, like, you know, that his division, for whatever reason, was just like, your division is going away. So I don't think there's a rhyme or reason to it. And it's just kind of like, it's a part of, you know, how hard it is, but there's nothing that you individually are lacking. It's just simply that you're competing against just so many people. And so you really, networking is key in this conversation when it comes to getting into that, because once you're competitive, once you get into the interview loop, you can compete against a dozen people. You can't compete against 1,000. It's just impossible.
Yeah, you're right about that. And networking is one of the next biggest steps that I'm trying to just put my hand in the pot with that one, because like you said, 1,000 applicants, or even if you're looking at 100, I'll be applying at LinkedIn, and it'll come up within an hour, and already there's 100 applicants. I'm just rushing to get mine in there really quickly.
Yeah, it's hard. And honestly, getting rejected hurts. You feel it inside. I mean, there's, if you've read anything, I like I said, I did writing, I did graduate school for writing. I've received hundreds of rejection letters from poems that I poured my heart and soul into, and this person, some editor somewhere, looked at it for however long they looked at it and was like, nope, no, thank you. The same thing with applications. It hurts inside, because, you know, rejection hurts us. But, you know, getting used to and getting comfortable with that rejection and being like, all right, like Taylor Swift, shake it off, move on. And because there's that next thing is out there. You know, take that moment. You know, I've had jobs that I loved. I absolutely was like, man, I would be so good at this job. I was already in love with the job. I had already thought about, like, man, I can't wait to have that title. I was so excited about it. Get the rejection letter, and you're like, okay, well, take a moment, feel those emotions, and then move on, because there's no time to sit and wallow in this. You know, at the end of the day, a friend of mine recently, she hasn't made it publicly known yet, but she texted me earlier today, and after 10 months, she finally got an offer. And it's awesome. It's cool. to be able to celebrate that with her. I didn't do anything to help her other than just be your buddy. And like, so she was like very effusive with her praise and thanks of me. And I'm like, listen, I was just there for you as a friend. I didn't do anything. I didn't get you the job. I didn't get you the introduction to the company, didn't do any of that stuff. But be that person too for others. Celebrate. That's my favorite used emoji on LinkedIn is celebrate, because I love going through there. New role, new cert, new education, doesn't matter. I'm just ready for them hands to be clapping. Like, I love it. So.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering all that and for the
Absolutely.
knowledge.
Don't feel bad. That's, I think, the most important thing is there's certainly things that we can all tweak and improve upon. I look at resumes, hundreds of resumes a year, and I still look at my own, and there's things that I'm blind to. And so that's why I don't, I wouldn't look at anybody's resume and be like, oh man, your resume is so messed up, and that's why you didn't get this job. Or like, oh, you really, messed that interview up. We all have things that we can learn to do better on. Leverage tools, ask, ChatGPT, Google the top 10 most asked questions. They're typically the same, tell me about a difficult experience. Tell me about a time when you had a challenging coworker. Tell me about, there's a pretty standard list of questions. And there's good and bad interviewers. And that's something that we don't talk often enough about, but there are people who are just absolutely terrible at interviewing. Tell me about the worst experience you ever had in a work environment. You have no idea the can of worms you're opening. You don't know what could have possibly happened. Like, what my worst day looks like, I don't think that like there are a lot of people that I want to have that conversation with, especially in an interview setting, and so it's one of those things that realize that too, that a lot of these people aren't good at this. It's hard to be good at interviewing people. It's hard to be good at talking to people, and asking questions and learning. And then also removing, because we're all biased, removing that bias in the process, and you do that by having standardized questions. You do that by having every single question be asked by the same person. So Microsoft's actually got amazing training for interviews, where you have to go through and make sure you pick your questions, and then you create a rubric and you grade those people accordingly. So that way, as much as humanly possible, because we're all humans and so therefore we're all biased, you try and remove that from the process. But if you came on and you were like, I'm an Eckerd grad, it would be hard for me to sit there afterwards. That's where I went to undergrad, and not feel like, oh man, I really like that answer, that Eckerd grad person, that person who graduated from Eckerd College. Because that's just our nature. We want to find people who are, you're an Army SIGINT analyst. Oh man, I was an Army SIGINT analyst. We have those things that we want to bond with people. We want to connect with people. So it makes interviews hard. Canderful, for those of you who are veterans or mil spouses, Canderful is a really cool, Google Canderful, you'll find it, neat program. You're eligible for 3 interview sessions. If you're part of law enforcement, hit me up. I'm happy to talk interview stuff, because I love that CWCT expands the coverage and the support. I know we're capped at time. I can stay a few minutes longer. I would like to get the group pick before we start losing people.
I love that idea too, Jonathan. Yeah, so I'll try and encourage everyone. If you would like to come off camera for a group picture, actually, please come off camera for a group picture. I think that'd be really cool. We don't get to do that very often. So if we can get at least like 20, 25. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I love this. Jonathan, are you taking it? Are you doing the screenshot?
I can certainly.
Please,
Let me see what the view gallery. Yeah, gallery looks good. Okay. Admit Scott. I think everybody defaults, if they're on camera, they default to the front. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna close this. All right. Let me see. Stare at the camera. 1, 2, 3, smile. Fantastic.
Wait, was that your smile, Jonathan? That was like a half smile you gave.
That's me, baby. That's
okay.
it.
All right, cool. I dig it.
I'm not a toothy smiler. I'm a it's funny because my the guy who did my my portrait, my headshot, my portrait, he was like, hey, you gotta smile. I'm like, this is it. This is my smile. So let me drop it in the chat. I think that'll work. It's loading. Okay, there, it's in. Feel free to tag me in your post if you want. I'll certainly, I'll go through and like, support, celebrate. But it's a neat way to help people know that like also that you're out there. LinkedIn is a marketing tool. It's you advertising yourself. Post about like, I know people who they're open to work and they don't want to put that they're open to work. There are personal reasons why that may be. Some people are in employed situations where they don't want to be employed by that current employer. And so that's the reason that they hide that. But if you're open to work, if you're hungry, you tell people you're hungry. If you're thirsty, you tell people you're thirsty. If you're open to work, tell people you're open to work. Because I go through LinkedIn all the time looking for people with green banners and connecting to them specifically because I want to have them in my network and then be like, hey, here you go. You know, poach whatever connections you possibly can or need from that. So.
Well, I just want to say, I know we're a little over time now, and Jonathan, if you want to stick around, I don't want to keep you, but I just want to say thank you to everybody for taking the time out on a Wednesday. A huge thank you to Jonathan for taking time. I mean, I mean it. I'm not just trying to talk you up for no reason, Jonathan, just because you're a guest. I mean, I know you take the time out to volunteer for a lot of different orgs just like this because you have the same mission that we do in our program, but also to our students and alumni that are part of the call. Thanks for making time to come hang out with us tonight. I hope you learned something. Recording will be up on our little YouTube page within the next couple of weeks. And I do have a shameless plug. Next Friday is our career fair. We're partnered with Act Now Education. Check your email, send me a direct message if you do not have the information. We're partnering up with Act Now to do a career fair next Friday evening. So if you're looking for a new gig, it's going to be great. It's going to be less from the CWCT career fairs we've done in the past. And this is going to be a little bit more of a booth kind of setup. It's still going to be over Zoom. It's virtual, but it's a little bit more fine-tuned than what we've done in the past. If you need information, let me know. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. If anybody wants to stick around, I'll be here for a little while. But again, feel free to jump off. Have a great night. Have a great week. And please follow Jonathan on LinkedIn. Hit me up and the other CWCT staff members that are in the call if you need anything from us. So thank you again.